Are there what games bring up like just vivid memories for you, like that go beyond the game itself? Like you remember the time period or the things you were going through in life, or the people that were in your life, friends, loved ones, exes. Jedi power battles. You used to play that with your dad all the time. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, what are the games that I played with my dad? I think, yeah, Air Fortress is one. I've talked about that game. We were talking about that earlier on stream. My dad's all-time favorite game, and I remember when he beat it finally, and like the whole family was crowded around this like really crummy TV, and we all cheered. It was pretty great. Undertale's a big one for you. Des was in the hospital. You beat the neutral ending when they were asleep in the hospital bed. Oh, that's wild. OG Halo used to play with your friends and your dad. Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember OG Halo because I only played OG Halo for 5 minutes at a friend's place just before, like, we were in between. Like, I went to his house to pick him up before we went out, and I played it for 5 minutes and was like, this is a ripoff of GoldenEye. I'm done. And that's it. GTA 3, your brother just got it into it because he wanted me out of his hair and told me it was just like Crazy Taxi. I mean, in a way, it was kind of better than Crazy Taxi, right? Crazy Taxi's pretty rad, though. Oh, man, you just reminded... Okay, I'm going, like, full nostalgia time. Because I flash back to... Like, I hear Crazy Taxi, and then, like, I remember that in the arcade, but, like, that was, like, later in the, like, late 90s, early 2000s. I'm thinking, like, this flashback to, like, the mid-90s, and I remember being in the arcade at the Woodbine Center in, like, north of Toronto, and I think of, like, Daytona, USA, and just... They had a lot of arcade machines there. It was Wizard's Castle. Was it Wizard? I can't remember. It was Wizard. It was in the Fantasy Fair. Woodbine Center. Okay. The Woodbine Center is a mall north of the city that has like an amusement park inside it, like a really small one. It has like a jungle gym sort of thing, and there's a slide that goes from like the roof down, and there's a train that goes all the way around. They used to have an arcade, and like my mom used to go to night school nearby, and it didn't make sense for us to drive all the way home and all the way back. So we, like, once a week when she was taking her courses, we would hang out at the mall. Like my dad, Randy, and I. Randy was like a toddler or a little kid at the time. And I remember being in the arcade, and I hear like vividly in my head, Daytona, and it was like the Daytona USA machine. It just like had that scream and that song. And like wherever you were in the arcade, you just heard that. And I remember like Daytona, like the polygons and the graphics, but I just think of that singing, the Daytona. Yeah, Player 2 Star got it. Yeah. And that kind of flashed me back to that moment and being at the arcade. Super Street Fighter 2 was a big game at the time. And then a little later they released 2 Turbo, and then everyone was doing the Akuma code, and I would just get destroyed because I didn't know how to play with the joystick. I was much more comfortable with the controller at the time, getting my butt kicked by teenagers who were way better than me. Mortal Kombat's another one of those I think about, like being at the arcade. Flashback, yeah, it was Dad and Randy, and later on in the evening, we'd usually end up at Sears, sitting at the, like, we're just killing time at this point. Sears, sitting in the entertainment section. They had like the big leather sofa, and we'd watch the big screen TV, and sometimes they had these like random 3D animation demo videos. Oftentimes it was the movie Independence Day, starring Will Smith, and they also had a Sega Genesis machine that you could demo, and I played a bunch of Sonic games on there. I played Vector Man on there. Those were the big ones I remember. Okay, go back. See, this is fun. That is probably like, and it may be at the end of the stream. Let's finish this and then just have a chat. Like when I think about games and like the memories associated with specific games, I can probably pull up a lot. Trip down memory lane. It's the mid 2000s. I've fallen out of my radio career, and I am now primarily working as a stock boy at a pharmacy. I am kind of going through I'm very much going through a quarter life crisis, not really knowing what to do with my life. I thought that had I gone to school and got good grades, I would have gotten the job that I wanted and life would have been okay. And it didn't work out that way for me. And I went through a major depressive spiral where I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And one of the Christmases there, my mom got me a Super Nintendo for Christmas. It's the Super Nintendo that I actually have right here. And like, you know, we'd lost the Super Nintendo. We got robbed, and like getting the Super Nintendo was like so heartwarming for me at the time, because like I was just in a really dark place in life, and just having the Super Nintendo as a gift at that point like really brought me back to a time where I was happy and playing games, and I had friends that I would play with all the time, and like just retro games at the time brought me to like a happy place. And I remember around this time I was buying a lot of used retro games, stuff that I could play on the SNES. I bought an NES, and one of the stores, there was a store that no longer exists, and I remember I found the store in like the phone book or something, or online, something like that, and was like, I want to check it out. And I remember telling my friend Wendy, like, hey, let's go check out this game store, and she was down. Wendy's always down. Shoutouts to Wendy. She has made cameo appearances at least 1 or 2 Extra Lives where she shows up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Anyhow, we go to this store, and they have an Atari section, and they had 2 Atari 2600s. They had the junior one, which I'm holding here, and they had like the classic wood one, like the one that everyone's seen, and they had a whole bunch of games. And I have memories of this thing too, like, well, of the other Atari 2600. Like my very first gaming machine was an Atari 2600. It was a very small store, but they had like a whole bunch of retro games in glass cases and stuff, and they had the Ataris there. And I remember I wanted one, and Wendy wanted one, and we each bought an Atari, and we bought a set of games for them. And I remember being like really happy being able to play a bunch of old games that I grew up with, like even before the Nintendo. And I also bought this. Okay, you've seen this game a bunch of times on the stream, but I can't tell the story without showing this. And then I bought one of the crown jewels of my video game collection, E.T. on the Atari 2600. And we'd heard all the stories about how bad this game was, and a couple of days later she came by the house and I hooked it up, and as it turns out, this game's absolutely horrible. Probably still the worst game I have ever played. Is it like literally the worst game? Probably not, but for a game that was made and sold millions of copies, and considering the hype that it had behind it and the spectacular failure that it was in terms of sales, and they dumped a whole bunch of the cop games in the landfill and all that, like one of the biggest disappointments for sure. And oh cool, I didn't know they made a game out of Katy Perry's song. And so yeah, when I think about like Atari stuff. It's even like there's the time when I was like a toddler and I was just messing around, but like I think back to quarter life crisis time of me going out with Wendy and us getting just a bunch of Atari stuff and then playing a bunch of the games and playing this, and this was really bad. The other thing, it turned out that the video game store that I bought this at was actually not far from Steph's house. Like, she was like 2 blocks away, and this would be, I would be in her neighborhood like 5 years before we met. I was just right there. I was just at the video game store around the corner buying Atari 2600 games. And afterwards I went to that store all the time because it had such a good selection and good prices. But yeah, little did I know, like, my future wife was like down the street. Yeah, that was fun. I think that we'll do this again sometime. Flashbacks to, I think, the memories around the games and not just the games themselves, because I think there's a lot of cool stories that I have, that you have around particular games. Like, what music was big? Where were you at in life? Are there any smells associated with when you think about or play that game? I think there's fantastic stories for all of us to share. But I think that's going to do it for tonight. Thank you to everybody that dropped by this evening.